Well, welcome to 700 Club Israel. We've all heard the call to wipe Israel off the map. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, those protesters say Arabs and Jews can't coexist so long as Israel occupies Palestinian land. Yet, as you're about to see, Arabs attacked Jews long before the creation of the modern state of Israel. Years earlier, the city of Hebron was the site of a bloodbath, a massacre just as horrific as October 7th. And as Open Door Media's Noam Weissman explains, the aftershocks of that massacre are still being felt today.
See this place? This is the city of Hebron, or Chevron. I've been there a number of times. So much history in this ancient city, so much meaning to Jews and Muslims and Christians alike. It's majestic. Feels like you're going back in time to the Bible. So different from South Florida, where I currently reside. But Hebron is also the site of a terrible and bloody massacre that happened before the state of Israel was even founded. 67 Jews were ruthlessly murdered on that dark day. More significantly than just the death count, understanding what happened in Hebron and what preceded that horrendous bloodbath is sort of crucial for understanding the whole Arab-Israeli conflict that we've been locked in for all of these years. Of all the war and violence of the past 100 years, why is this episode so important? I'm Noam, and you're watching History of Israel Explained. Yalla, let's do this. Okay, you're gonna have to stick with me here, because before we can get to the massacre that unfolded on the streets of Hebron, we have to turn our attention 30 miles north to the old city of Jerusalem, the year 1929. The youth are scandalizing their elders by bobbing their hair and rouging their knees. The stock market hurtles towards disaster. And in the Middle East, a storm is a-brewing, one that is still raging today. The British control the country we now know as Israel, then known as the region of Palestine. And unfortunately, the Brits are doing a pretty bad job of managing the growing fault lines between the region's Arabs and its Jews. There have always been Jews in the land of Israel, but as more and more Jews began making aliyah, or moving back to their ancestral homeland, the Arab population was not so happy. One prominent Muslim leader, Grand Mufti Haj Amin al-Husseini, seized every opportunity to fan the flames of the Arabs' growing discontent. It's probably worth noting that Husseini was a rabid anti-Semite who would later cozy up to Axis powers during World War II. Oh cool, here's a pic of him hanging out with Hitler. Unfortunately for the Jews, the Mufti was in charge of the holiest site in Judaism, which is also a really holy site in Islam. It's called the Temple Mount, where the two Jewish holy temples stood before they were destroyed. But when it came to administering the site, the Grand Mufti didn't like any perceived challenges to his authority. So when the Jews put up a temporary mechitza at the Western Wall, which is a barrier separating men and women during Orthodox prayer, on Yom Kippur of 1928, the Mufti was peeved. The Jews were beginning to act like they owned the place. Unacceptable. He tried calling for additional restrictions on Jewish worshippers. But the British, who were still administering Palestine, reminded the Mufti that Jews were allowed to pray at their holy spaces. So he got creative. Whenever Jews prayed at the Kotel, the Mufti arranged for construction projects and unnecessarily loud religious ceremonies. Pretty petty. Sounds like something my first grader might do if she gets annoyed at her big brother. But things took a nastier turn when rumors started circulating that the Jews had their eye on controlling the Temple Mount. The Arab community even distributed falsified pictures of damage to the Dome of the Rock, claiming that Jews were responsible. Sadly, fake news is not a recent phenomenon. And the Jews, for their part, were fed up by Arab interference with their religious freedom. So on Tisha B'Av, which marks the destruction of the temples, a few hundred Jews staged a procession at the Kotel shouting, "The wall is ours," and singing Hatikva, which would become the Israeli national anthem. Palestinian intellectual Sari Nusayba writes that this was the moment that, quote, the 3,000-year-long Jewish spiritual attachment to the Western Wall turned into a nationalistic slogan, which in turn produced a nasty backlash among the Muslims. In other words, saying the wall is ours was tantamount to saying Jerusalem is ours, or even Palestine is ours. So the Mufti ratcheted up his propaganda. His goons, yes, they were goons, flooded neighboring villages with leaflets that instructed, "Rise up against the enemy who violated the honor of Islam and raped the women and murdered widows and babies." To be clear, no one was raped, murdered, or even injured during the procession at the wall, unless you count some off-key singing of Hatikva to be an assault against the ears, which I really do get. But that is the power of propaganda. Within a day, a Muslim mob had stormed the Kotel, ripping up prayer books. That same day, a Jewish boy was stabbed to death. Palestine's long-simmering tensions had finally erupted. But it was in Hebron where the savagery went to another level. Hebron is a super holy site in Judaism. The city is mentioned like 87 times in the Hebrew Bible. It's the burial place of the great patriarchs and matriarchs, and it's what my third grade son spent like 4 months studying in third grade. And Hebron is really sacred to Muslims and Christians too. In 1929, Hebron's 800-year-old Jewish community was tiny. Only 800 of the city's 20,000 residents were Jews. Jewish-Arab relations could be tense at times, but overall, the city was a model of tolerance, if not coexistence. So much so that its Jews refused the protection of the Haganah, the pre-state Jewish defense organization that would one day become the Israeli army. The riot, which turned into a massacre, started with rock throwing. But within hours, the Arab mob claimed its first casualty. 24-year-old yeshiva student Shmuel Halevi Rosenholtz, stabbed to death outside the famed Hebron Yeshiva. As anxieties mounted, Eliezer Dan Slonim offered his home as a refuge to any Jews concerned about violence. He was a well-respected figure among Jews and Arabs alike, and assumed his status would keep him safe. 40 yeshiva students took him up on the offer, with tragic results. Details of the massacre are gruesome, so I won't get too detailed. But you should know this. In roughly 2 hours that Saturday morning, aka Shabbat, the mob murdered 67 Jews, many in barbaric ways. Eyewitnesses reported widespread rape, torture, mutilation, and other unspeakable cruelties. One unnamed American yeshiva student later told the New York Times that, quote, "Doors were smashed and infants, children, women, and men without distinction butchered in a manner incredible even in the blackest day of the Spanish Inquisition." Eliezer Dan Slanum's house turned from sanctuary to slaughterhouse in a matter of minutes. See, in deference to Slanum's position in the community, the mob offered him a deal. Turn over the Ashkenazi yeshiva students, and the city's Sephardic residents would be spared. Slonim did not view this as much of a moral dilemma and courageously refused this inhumane bargain. The mob had assumed that Slonim might make the distinction between Zionists from Europe and other Jews, but for Slonim, no such distinction existed. So he was murdered on the spot, along with his wife and child. All in all, 22 people were murdered in his house. The worst of humanity was on display that day. And so was the best. It's important to remember this too. Horrified by the mob's savagery, some Arab neighbors opened their homes to Jews, locals, immigrants, and visitors alike. Eliezer Dan Slanum's sister, Rivka, was rescued by a heroic neighbor named Abu Shakir. He refused to give up the Jewish families hiding in his home, even when the mob stabbed him with a sword. Roughly 300 of Hebron's Jews survived through the efforts of 28 Arab neighbors who protected the Jews at great personal risk. The violence in Hebron petered out at 10:30 that morning. By the end of a week of terror, 133 Jews in the region had been murdered and 339 wounded. 116 Arabs were killed, mostly but not all at the hands of the British. A few Jews took matters into their own hands, inflicting revenge killings on innocent Arab families, flouting the Haganah's official policy of restraint. Jewish-Arab coexistence was among that day's casualties. The violence in Hebron demonstrated to the Jews that they couldn't trust their neighbors. Yes, some Arabs saved Jews, but many more turned most cruelly against their Jewish friends. So why is this massacre critical for understanding the conflict today? Because it echoes well into the future. As more and more Jews entered Palestine, the Arabs worried that these new immigrants would take control of the land and holy sites. Nearly 100 years later, not much seems to have changed. In the year 2000, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon paid a visit to the Temple Mount. Many point to this visit as the impetus for the Second Intifada. And tensions over the Temple Mount caused flare-ups until this day. The similarities between 1929 and 2022 don't stop there. Propaganda, then and now, plays an outsized role in the Arab-Israeli and Palestinian-Israeli conflicts. If you've ever been on social media, you've probably seen your fair share of anti-Israel infographics and tweets and highly edited videos. The propaganda that made its way around the internet during a flare-up in May of 2022 was no different than the Mufti's propaganda of 1929. Both made false claims that the Jews were trying to take over the Temple Mount and destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque. Both preyed on people who didn't know any better, and both directly resulted in violence. The Hebron massacre brutally claimed 67 Jewish lives. But its importance doesn't lie in its death toll or its savagery. Yes, I know in the YouTube comments, many of y'all might start mentioning other massacres, and indeed, there were plenty, but this massacre was a turning point in the conflict because it broke whatever fragile tolerance or trust had once existed between Arabs and Jews. After the vicious slaughter of unarmed Jewish men, women, and children, even the most dovish Jew understood that the only chance at Jewish security lay in armed defense. Palestine's Jews poured their efforts into strengthening the Haganah, the Jewish self-defense organization that would later become the Israeli army. The Jewish people would no longer be defenseless in their own home. I don't have an easy solution for the Arab-Israeli conflict or for the gaping chasm between Israelis and Palestinians. I'm not a politician. I'm not a diplomat. I'm an educator trying to make sense of it all. For me, the Hebron massacre suggests that if the two groups are ever going to live in peace, their only hope lies in rebuilding the shattered trust between them. I don't want it to take another 100 years, but I want to believe that one day neighbors will be able to fully trust each other once more.
And we all pray for that, and we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the peace of Israel. But I wanted to bring you this story to show you the history here, that it goes all the way back to that massacre at Hebron. It goes back even further than that. The blood libels against the Jewish people, completely making up inflammatory stories in order to justify killing Jews. We're seeing that throughout the world now. And we have to recognize what the source is. The rabbis say in every generation there arises a Haman, and that's from the story of Esther, who wants to wipe the Jewish people off the planet, not just in Israel, but off the planet. And in that, we have to say, well, what's the source of that? What's the source of Haman? And the source of Haman is a very evil, who understands what the Bible prophesies and thinks, well, if I can get rid of the Jewish people, then these prophecies won't happen, and there won't be an end to this present age. I can go on forever. That's what's happening here. We're in a spiritual battle, and we need to recognize it. In that, we also need to recognize we stand with Israel and we stand with righteousness. We want to thank our friends at Unpacked for that wonderful video. Unpacked is an open door media brand. Make sure to follow them on YouTube, on Facebook, and all the social media platforms. For more great content and to support their mission, all you have to do is go to unpacked.media. Well, Hebron is one of the Jewish people's holiest cities, and I'll add to it, it's one of the world's holiest cities. It's where the biblical patriarch Abraham is buried. It's also a divided city controlled by Israel and the Palestinian Authority. CBN's Scott Ross visited Hebron back in 2019, and as he discovered, Jews, Muslims, and Christians all share one holy site.
This is Hebron, the place Abraham buried his wife Sarah. Later, according to the Bible, he, his son Isaac, and grandson Jacob, and their wives were all buried here in the place now known as the Cave of the Patriarchs. Revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims as a holy city, Hebron was the first capital of King David. But recently, the United Nations deemed it a Muslim holy site in danger.
With the archaeological digs, would that prove the existence of Israel going back these thousands of years, if that was unearthed?
In Hebron, everything that you find fits all the biblical sources. When you read in Genesis 23 about Abraham, how he purchased the whole field around and the trees, the cave is there, it's located right beneath the rocks there, which are the end of the field, and the cave itself was dated to the Middle Bronze Age, which is equal to the forefathers' era. In the cave we discovered vessels and pottery from the First Temple period. You know, the name Hebron in Hebrew is connection.
Connection?
Yes, Hebron, lechaber is to connect. So in Hebron everything connects. The sources, the archaeology, the tradition, the holiness, everything connects together.
Arnon took me into the massive structure and showed me what they call the Gate of Heaven.
What is written here, in Hebrew, Me'arat HaMachpelah Petach Gan Eden, the Cave of Machpelah, according to ancient Jewish sources, is the gate of heaven. So now let's go, let's go and see.
Now we're into heaven.
Yes. Now actually, part of the building today is closed for Jews, a part is open. We are in this part. Many people come to pray here from all the world, from all the religions. Today they speak about Abrahamic religions. Well, Abraham is right here. This is the memorial of Abraham. Actually, the cave is located right beneath this memorial. And we have here three couples, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah.
So the actual bones are down underneath here?
Yes, underneath.
How did you discover it?
Well, it was in the middle of the night, one of the last nights of the Jewish calendar, and there are special prayers, and people come here and blow the shofar and sing many songs. So there was a lot of noise, and we, covered by that noise, we got the tools to open the gates of heaven, like hammers, like chisels.
That was decades ago, and no one is allowed in the cave anymore.
There were some stairs leading to a dark and long tunnel. We have crawled through this tunnel. We took some stones from the floor, and then we discovered the cave. Actually, it's two caves. I found myself crawling amongst human bones. So it's really to touch the history, to touch the Bible.
Nearby is the main synagogue where Jews can pray. Today, the building is divided between synagogue and mosque. The Muslim religious authorities control the religious aspects of the entire place, while Israel maintains the security. A unique arrangement helps keep the peace.
As you can see here, Muslims can visit to the big hall. Jews can visit the blue part, which is about 1/4 of the whole complex. Christians are allowed to both sides. This is the situation here, 344 days a year. 10 days a year, Jews are allowed to the big hall, and other 10 days a year, the Muslims are allowed to this side, and then the Jews stand outside.
Arnon says the arrangements aren't ideal. He'd rather everyone have complete access all the time.
We ask the government to open it. They say, it's standing, don't touch it. And it's working, don't touch it. So this is how it's working.
Scott Ross for CBN at the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron.
Well, obvious, important site for all the religions of the world, that here you have the place where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried along with their wives, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that the knowledge of that has spread around the world. This is not just an important site, it's an incredible site. It's also the place where King David was anointed king of Judah before he was declared king over all of Israel. And that's where he set up his headquarters. So you look at all of these things and you go, well, that should definitely be a Jewish site. It's also a place, and I have to point this out because the Abraham Accords, it is possible for the sons of Ishmael to come together with the sons of Isaac and have peace. And that's the whole intent of the Abraham Accord. Ishmael and Isaac came to peace when they buried their father Abraham in that very cave. And wouldn't it be great for that to be a gathering place, not a massacre place, but a gathering place to say, can we stop this fighting and come to peace and live together in peace? Jamal was going blind, and he was being bullied because of it. His parents knew he needed an operation, and you helped make it happen.
Amjad and Muhammad live in Hebron in the southern West Bank. When they realized their son Jamal kept squinting, they were worried.
We noticed that he had difficulty focusing on objects, and he was bullied by other children because his eye did not look normal.
A clinic diagnosed Jamal with strabismus, a degenerative crossed eyes condition that left untreated can permanently affect his vision.
The doctor suggested surgery, but our financial situation did not allow us to proceed with the operation. The economic situation in Hebron has been very challenging since the war started.
Then a doctor told them about CBN's sponsor program at a hospital in Jerusalem.
When the hospital informed us that we would be sponsored and the surgery costs would be covered, we were overjoyed and extremely grateful because we had thought about taking out a loan for the procedure.
There was no way we would have been able to afford this on our own, but I was ready to do whatever it took to make sure my son could get this surgery.
CBN Israel sponsored the surgery and helped the family travel from the Palestinian Authority to the hospital. The surgery was a success, and thanks to you, CBN Israel also provided Jamal a new backpack and school essentials for the new school year.
Jamal is happy because now he will be able to participate fully at school, become even smarter, and feel confident around other children. We're so grateful for the efforts of CBN and the generous people who made this surgery possible. We are all human beings under God's mercy.
We are all human beings under God's mercy. We're all children of God. And in that, let's recognize whether you're Jewish or you're Muslim or you're Christian or you're none of the above. If you're in need in Israel, CBN Israel wants to help you because you're made in the image of God, and we want to bless you. If you're a part of that, you're reaching out with hands of love and compassion to people in absolute need. If you want to be a part of blessing Israel and blessing all the people of Israel, you can call us and say, yes, you can count on me. I'll join up. 1-800-350-2230 is the number to call. You can also go to our website, cbn.com/supportisrael, or you can text Support Israel to 71777. Be a part of it. Let's be a blessing. And the Bible is quite clear. Those that bless the descendants of Abraham will be blessed by God. That's an absolute promise, and you can count on it. So let's be a blessing to the people of Israel, and let's continue to pray. In spite of these horrible massacres, the the libels, the propaganda that's going around. We can be agents of peace, instruments of peace, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Well, here's a word from Psalms. The Lord will work out his plans for my life, for your faithful love, O Lord, endures forever. God bless. We'll see you again.
Download the CBN News